When you first go up the steps and enter into the church, you'll see a window in the narthex, and it depicts the War in Heaven passage from Revelation 12 with Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon Satan and his angels. And this window was given in 1945 by the rector Dudley Stark and his wife Mary in memory of their son Gregory, who was killed in World War II. And a kind of sad story is that he had wanted to be a priest like his father. His brother Dudley wanted a career in the Army. Dudley was at West Point during the war and never saw active service. Gregory put off going to college and enlisted in the Army after high school and was killed in 1945. Like nearly all the windows in the church, it was designed by Connick Associates of Boston. Most of the work was done by Connick himself, but some of the later ones were designed after his death. Coming into the rear of the church, you will see the very large Te Deum Laudamus window. And this is a representation of the canticle from the prayer book. And there are many people that are supposed to praise the Lord. There are these groups of them in the window, and I won't go into excessive detail about it. In the lower center panel, there are three figures representing the Holy Innocents. And if you look at them closely, you will see that the face of the left-hand figure is a slightly different color. This window was damaged in 1969. They were just about to begin the trial of the rioters from the 1968 Democratic Convention. And a group met at the south end of Lincoln Park and ran along Dearborn and State Street, throwing stones into the windows of buildings and cars as they went along and breaking this window. Connick Associates fortunately had the information on the window and could send a replacement piece for it, but apparently the preferred color for flesh had changed slightly over the years, and so this face is just a slightly different color. The window was given by William and Joan Chalmers in memory of their two children, both of whom died within only about 10 days of each other in 1923, both in their early 40s. The son apparently had, from reports in the papers, it was some war-related condition, possibly gassed, I don't know. And the daughter may have had TB because she had been living their family had been living first in France and then in some area of New England that I think was considered to be a good site for TB victims. And interesting thing about the Chalmers Sr. is that she was the daughter of Alan Pinkerton of the Secret Service. She fell in love with Chalmers and wanted to marry him. And her father didn't think that Chalmers was ever going to amount to anything, and he was very hesitant, and he finally said, well, you can do it, but he's never going to be anything but a clerk in his father's business. Well, he was the founder of Alice Chalmers, so Mr. Pinkerton was not correct. Just north of that window, there is a small window depicting Christ holding a model of St. Chrysostom's Church. Also in that window are the U.S. Episcopal Church and the Canadian Anglican Church flags and the crest of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. This was given by a couple who were very active in the church in the 50s. And his father, Wallace Owen, had come from Canada and had been in the RCMP. And so they wanted to include Canadian symbols in that window. And it was actually designed, the idea for the design came from our rector at the time, Cuthbert Pratt. And he kept quite in touch with the Connick people to see how things were coming on the window. The windows at the north side of the church all commemorate women saints. And I love to take people on tours of the church and point this out, particularly if you got women in the group. The first window that you come to is Martha of Bethany. She has a green halo, which is a symbol of the active life, and I like to point this out because I think so many women have to juggle so many activities, and I want them to know that they're earning a green halo for themselves. In some of the windows, the small scenes relate to something that's connected with the person memorialized, but in this window it's all activities of St. Martha, and there's one story that she killed a dragon, and there's a small scene of that shown in the window. Mary, Martha's sister, is shown in the next window, and she's also represented as Mary Magdalene. This is an identification that is disputed, and some people believe, yes, this Mary was Mary Magdalene, and some don't. And I don't know whether Connick believed it or not, but he took advantage of this because then you could have items in the window relating to both Mary Magdalene and Mary of Bethany. She's shown with long hair, which is traditional for Mary Magdalene, and is standing on a skull, and that's also a traditional depiction of Mary Magdalene. The next window is St. Elizabeth holding John the Baptist, and John the Baptist is in a brownish robe, and that is because he was in the wilderness, wore camel's hair. And it was given by a couple, and they traveled a lot, and so there's a figure of a boat and of St. Christopher, patron of travelers, alluding to that. And then a child with a crutch and a representation of St. Luke. The wife was active as a volunteer with children's hospitals. The window nearest to the front of the church is the Virgin Mary with the infant Jesus. And the donor of that window wanted to give a Tiffany window. And Norman Hutton, the rector at the time, very much disliked Tiffany windows. And he said, he's quoted somewhere as saying that he would not have one of those horrible Tiffany things, and he would certainly refuse the gift rather than spoil the church. And although I don't know as I would go that far about Tiffany windows, that window is in a position on the north side where it doesn't get much light and would probably have not, in most circumstances, been able to be seen at its best. And the donor did give way and go for a Connick. And they suggested several saints, none of whom he at first agreed to, and then he suggested that it be the Virgin Mary, which was accepted by all. And his wife was a member of both the DAR and the Colonial Dames, and symbols of them are in the window. And it's probable, because this was the first of the windows installed on the north side, that having one window to a woman, that they wanted to go on and have all three of them to women, all three of the others to women saints. Then we come to the Brooker Chapel, which is the latest addition to the church fabric. It was for many years a space used for the organ pipes, and it was covered over, and the Ascension panel, which is now at the back of that chapel, was designed to cover this blank space that was covered over for the organ pipes. The panel was given by parishioner Dorothy Eckhart Williams in memory of her father Bernard Eckhart, who was active in the Parks movement and also was the person who pulled the switch when they reversed the flow of the Chicago River. He was involved in that activity as well. And the windows in that chapel are the only ones that were not designed by Koenig. I don't know who the designer was, but they picked someone who would do a very simple style that would not conflict with the Koenig windows. Then at the front of the church, we have the lectern, which was designed by Gorham for the 1893 World's Fair. It was not the original one in the church, but someone on the vestry heard that it was available for sale, and the parish bought it and sold their original lectern to another congregation. The high altar and the reredos were dedicated in 1926. They are a memorial to a man who was killed in World War I. He was himself not a member of the parish, but his parents had moved into the area by 1926 and gave this in his memory. The triptych was not the work of a single person, but the original design was worked over until perfection was achieved. There was a rumor at the time that it had been made for another church which couldn't afford it, and Richard Hoskins once told me that he had seen a date of 1921 on the carving, which would certainly serve to prove that rumor probably accurate. In the mid-90s, we started having a holy table where the elements were consecrated, and at first used a table from somewhere else in the parish, but a parishioner in the congregation, Pradeep Shimpi, was a furniture designer, and he agreed to design the present holy table, which was installed sometime in the 2000s. There are a number of pieces of needlepoint around the high altar. There's a rug that was worked in the was installed about 2006, and 3 or 4 parishioners worked on the different parts of this. And the needlepoint cushions were done, the larger ones in the 40s and then later ones in the 50s. And there are other needlepoint cushions by the Prie-Dieu that were done in, I think 1980s or so. The pulpit is also designed by Gorham, and it was installed in about 1899. And the 3 windows over the high altar, central one, the angel Gabriel, 2 standing angels on either side, were given by parishioner Bertha Bauer in memory of her husband Jacob. Jacob had been a of either born in Switzerland or of Swiss descent. And right under the figure of Gabriel in the lower center of the main window is an Edelweiss honoring this. And there's also a butterfly somewhere in one of the three windows, and that is a symbol of the resurrection. But it was also Bertha Bauer's preferred collectible. The Crane Chapel was added as part of the 1925 expansion of the church when they built the tower. And the chapel was put in, but was completely redecorated in, redone in the late 1940s, dedicated in February 1948. The bell tower and the carillon were given by Richard Crane Jr. of the Crane Plumbing family in memory of his parents, and his widow gave the chapel in her husband's memory. The Cranes had been great supporters of the work of the Byzantine Institute in Istanbul, which was restoring and making exact copies of the mosaics in the churches in that city. One of St. Chrysostom, the original is in Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, and you can see it if you're there, and for a parishioner who has seen this like every Sunday for many, many years, to see this at the original for the first time in Hagia Sophia was a big thrill to me. And Richard's Jr.'s wife, Florence, had David Adler design the black marble altar. And he did a set of candlesticks and a cross as well, which recently we have not been using. The lighting on the cross made it seem that two dirty feet were sticking out at the bottom of the robe of the saint, and people were mentioning this, so they changed it and used the present cross and candlesticks, which I think date from the early history of the parish. Windows in the south aisle, there is a single lancet window depicting an angel of praise, and it was not a memorial but was just given as a gift of thanksgiving by the Hind family, parents and three daughters. And it contains there's a small figure of a deer in the window alluding to the hind. There's a verse from Psalm 50, which I can't quote accurately, but it says, whoever offers praise honors me. The next window is of St. Luke, and it was the very first window installed in the church in 1925, on the first Sunday that after they did the remodeling and returned to the church for services. And it's a memorial to a boy who died at the age of 14, Chester Crandall Chapin. And some of the small figures in that window are scenes of Jesus with children, or refer to activities that Chester particularly enjoyed. There's a horse and a boat, so I assumed he liked riding and sailing. And there's a small depiction of St. Nicholas as a bishop and children coming to him. And I can't prove it, but Chester was confirmed the year before he died, and I wonder if this has some allusion to his confirmation. The next window is to St. Mark, and was a memorial to the longtime senior warden of the church. He was a doctor named John Chew. Is a small scene of Solomon, the judgment with two mothers bringing the baby, that is supposed to allude to Chew's good judgment in terms of being a warden. There's also a small scene showing Christ stilling the storm at sea. And the boat is really tipping back and forth. And it doesn't say so, but I wonder if this has any allusions to difficult times on the vestry when it looked like things might not work out so well. That window was to a senior warden, and the John the Baptist window is to the longtime junior warden, William Street. He was one of the founders of the parish, and that was one of the reasons they chose John the Baptist. And he was very active in diocesan affairs too, and it includes the seal of the diocese. And that is also interesting because long after he died, his nephew was elected suffragan bishop of Chicago. And he always said he liked to come to St. Chrysostom's for visitations because of his family ties there. And there's a small locust somewhere in the window, which is in allusion to John the Baptist's diet in the wilderness. And again, there's a figure of a church symbolizing Street's work for the parish. The last windows installed in the church are the 8 triangular windows on either side of the main aisle. Those on the north aisle are the 4 major Old Testament prophets. And from front to back we have Isaiah with tongs and coals of fire, Jeremiah a scroll and pen because he kept writing out passages and the rulers would get angry and tear them up and he'd have to write them again. Ezekiel, who talked a lot about the restored temple of Jerusalem, and it contains a representation of a temple, and Daniel with a lion. All these windows were given in memory of various people in the Bournique family. Helen Bournique was a long time member of the church. She lived to a good old age and died in 1995. And some earlier member of the family, Eugene Bournique, ran what was the best dancing school for children, ballroom dancing, not ballet, in the city. And then on the south side, going from back to front, we have the 4 evangelists, the 4 traditional symbols. Matthew, the winged man. Don't know anything much about the donor or the giver of that window. It's a memorial to someone named Elise Richards, but I can't tell you more about her. Mark is the winged lion, and it was given as a memorial to Irwin Rue, who was the president of the National Gas and Water Company. And his daughter and son-in-law were members of St. Chrysostom's, and I particularly remember the daughter, Eleanor, because she was very active on the Alder Guild, and I often worked with her. Luke is the winged ox, and that was given by the wife and children of George Faust. And the Fausts were very active in the congregation for many years, and I knew and was very, very fond of Mary Faust. She ran the book table at the rummage sale and the flower booth at the bazaar. And one time, my parents and I went to her summer place in Michigan for a weekend, and she was a wonderful hostess. The last of the windows is the winged eagle, a symbol of St. John the Evangelist. And it was given by the family of a man named Harry Oliver, who was president of, I can't remember the name of the company, but was very active with the senior centers of metropolitan Chicago. And although I never knew anything much about him, his family continued to give flowers in his memory for probably 30 years or so afterward, after his death.